Good morning, it's May 15th, and this is to my liberal friends. How many of you have borrowed money in the past? I had to purchase an automobile. I had to purchase a house. And I fulfilled my part of the agreement and paid the monthly auto payments and the monthly mortgage. That was the contract I signed, and it mandated that I do it, and I did it willingly. The United States is suffering from a mountain of debt. The national debt has risen to over $31 trillion and keeps rising each and every day. When this issue was discussed in the White House press briefing this past week, the administration spokesman, Karine Jean-Pierre, made this comment, which was ludicrous. And I quote her, she said, "If you buy a car, you're expected to pay the monthly payment. If you buy a home, you're expected to pay the mortgage each month." That is the expectation. That is the spending that you put forth or the spending that you may have done before, and now you're paying every month. If you do not pay your car payment, if you do not pay your mortgage, then your credit is going to be bad. It's going to hurt your credit. It's that simple. It's very, very simple. It's the right thing to do, end quote. Now, this was an answer that was in response to a question about the national debt and rising the debt limit. And of course, that led to many people relating that to the student loan issue. In case you've forgotten, the Biden administration wants to forgive a portion of student debt to the millions of borrowers out there. Pundits and voters have raised the same question. Then why don't students who borrowed the money have to repay their debt? And the part she left out in that response was, if you fail to make your payments, they will come and take away the car. And in case of a house, they will foreclose. In other words, they will take the house away from you. The student loan forgiveness issue is now before the Supreme Court. They're expected to make a ruling in two cases that sought to halt Joe Biden's plan to forgive up to $20,000 in federal student loans. This decision is expected within the next 6 weeks. This is important because over 26 million borrowers have applied to have this money forgiven, and over half of them, 16.5 million, have been fully approved by the Department of Education, and that information has been passed along to loan service providers to discharge the debt. In other words, wipe it out. Another reason this is important is that payments on student loans have been suspended during the COVID, and there are a whole lot of borrowers who have never paid a penny on their debt. They graduated during the pandemic, and now they're facing the real prospect they will have to start ponying up real money. The suspension will end 60 days after the Supreme Court decision or 60 days after June 30th, whichever happens first. So time in late August or September, payments will have to once again start. And I suspect the Biden team realizes the court may rule against them, so they're coming up with some other schemes to appease these young voters that will be crucial to them in 2024. There was a poll out that young voters now see Biden as being too old. So there have been discussions of reforming the income-driven repayments as well as some changes to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. If you're unfamiliar with that program, let me outline it for you. The PSLF program, created in 2007, is intended to help employees with nonprofit and government agencies by forgiving their student loans after 10 years of payments, 120 payments. The overall approval rate among applicants was low. Only about 7,000 borrowers have been approved before 2021, but the Biden administration could change all that by changing the rule and expanding those that might be eligible. And I would be remiss if I did not mention one major fact. Under federal bankruptcy law, student debt cannot be erased, except under the direst circumstances. The reason for this exception is simple. Just about every college student would borrow the max allowed while attending a school, and then they would declare bankruptcy a few months after graduation. And they're young enough so that the 7-year hit on their credit score is something they think they can live with. Now, I believe the court will rule against Biden and he will be sent scrambling. Of course, he will blame Republicans and the people that owe the money that he wanted to give them, this free cash, and that's exactly what it would be, free cash from the taxpayers, because that is who would be on the hook for these debts owed by the deadbeat borrowers. But he'll blame Republicans for not approving him. What Biden does not understand, and I'm not sure he understands much these days, is that there are millions of people out there that either paid off their loans or who never borrowed. They're going to be outraged that someone else is forcing them to repay their loans. But Biden is in the mode of trying to buy votes. This is just one example of these actions. We've seen it repeatedly. He wants to charge those with higher credit scores more in obtaining a mortgage so that people who have not repaid their other debts can get a mortgage. He's pandered to the black community in every way, including repeating his statement, quote, "If you don't vote for me, you ain't black," end quote. How much more insulting can that be to any black person? He's saying that you're not smart enough to make up your own mind on issues and you should allow the color of your skin to determine your vote. Can you imagine if any politician reversed that statement and said, quote, if you don't vote for me, you ain't white? Do you think they'd be called a racist? I do, and so do you. It's been To My Liberal Friends. Thanks for listening. If you enjoy the podcast, recommend it to your friends.